The call came at 3 in the morning, cutting through my sleep like a buzzsaw through pine. Sheriff Callahan's voice was rough, like he'd been gargling gravel. "Jack, you need to come home. There's been a fire." I sat up in my military bunk, the Afghanistan heat already making my uniform stick to my back. "What kind of fire, Sheriff?" "The kind that takes everything, son. Your parents' place on Elm Street. They didn't make it out." The world tilted sideways. Mom and Dad, gone. Just like that. 27 years of marriage, and they died together in the house where I'd learned to ride a bike, where Sarah and I had our wedding reception in the backyard. "I can get you emergency leave," Callahan continued. 72 hours. Do what needs to be done." What needs to be done? The phrase echoed in my head as I packed my duffel bag. At 39, I thought I'd seen enough death in 2 tours overseas. Turns out, the worst was waiting for me back home in Massachusetts. The flight from Kabul to Boston gave me 18 hours to think, which was about 17 hours too many. I kept replaying the last conversation I'd had with Dad. He'd mentioned something about bikers causing trouble in town, the Black Vipers making noise about territory disputes. I'd brushed it off. Small-town drama seemed insignificant compared to Taliban roadside bombs. Now I wished I'd listened closer. Sarah picked me up at Logan Airport, her Honda Civic looking smaller than I remembered. She'd lost weight, her cheekbones sharp under her makeup. At 37, she was still beautiful, but there was something different in her eyes, something distant. "I'm so sorry, Jack," she said, not quite meeting my gaze. "It happened so fast. The whole neighborhood's in shock." I nodded, watching the familiar scenery roll past. The mill town where I'd grown up looked tired, like it was slowly giving up. Boarded storefronts, rusted chain-link fences, houses that needed paint jobs their owners couldn't afford. "How's Tyler handling it?" I asked about our 15-year-old son. "He's been quiet. You know how he gets." Sarah's fingers drummed against the steering wheel. "He's been spending a lot of time at Derek's gym." Derek Wolf. The name made my jaw clench. Sarah's old high school boyfriend who'd opened a fitness center downtown after his divorce. He'd been sniffing around Sarah ever since I deployed, offering to help with yard work, giving Tyler free gym memberships. A real good Samaritan, that Derek. "That's nice of him," I said, keeping my voice neutral. Sarah glanced at me quickly. "He's just being a good friend, Jack. To both of us." "Right. A good friend." We drove through downtown, past the diner where Sarah and I had our first date, past the movie theater where we'd taken Tyler to see his first film. Everything looked the same but felt wrong, like a photograph that's slightly out of focus. Dandelion Lane was buzzing with activity when we pulled up. Our neighbors clustered in small groups, their voices carrying across the evening air. Mrs. Patterson from next door waved sadly. The Johnsons from across the street nodded solemnly. Everyone knew what to do when tragedy struck a small town. They gathered. They whispered. They brought casseroles. Tyler was sitting on our front steps, his dark hair falling across his eyes as he stared at his phone. He looked up when I got out of the car, and for a moment, I saw the little boy who used to wait for me to come home from my construction job. "Dad." He stood up, and I pulled him into a hug. He was almost as tall as me now, all gangly limbs and teenage awkwardness. "I'm sorry I wasn't here, buddy." "It's not your fault." His voice was steady, but I felt him tremble slightly. "Grandpa always said you were serving your country." Inside our house, everything was exactly as I'd left it 6 months ago. Sarah's romance novels stacked on the coffee table, Tyler's gaming setup in the corner of the living room, my tools still scattered across the kitchen counter from the last repair job I'd done before shipping out. But something felt off. Maybe it was the way Sarah avoided eye contact, or how she kept checking her phone, or the fact that she'd rearranged the furniture in our bedroom. Small changes that probably meant nothing, or everything. "I made your favorite," Sarah said, pulling a casserole from the oven. Tuna noodle. I hadn't eaten a home-cooked meal in months, but my appetite was gone. "Thanks. I should probably go see what's left of Mom and Dad's place." "Jack, maybe you should wait until morning. It's pretty bad. I need to see it now." The drive to Elm Street took 5 minutes, but it felt like an hour. When we rounded the corner, I saw the skeleton of my childhood home, silhouetted against the darkening sky. The fire department had done their job, but there wasn't much left to save. Blackened timbers jutted up from the foundation like broken bones. The smell of smoke and melted plastic hung in the air. Sheriff Callahan was waiting for us, his uniform wrinkled like he'd been working around the clock. He'd known my family for 30 years, coached my little league team, attended my wedding. Now he looked older than his 65 years. Jack. He shook my hand firmly. I wish it was under better circumstances. What happened, Sheriff? Fire started around midnight. Neighbors called it in, but by the time the trucks got here, he shrugged helplessly. Your parents were overcome by smoke inhalation. They didn't suffer. I nodded, not trusting my voice. We're investigating, of course. Could be electrical, could be something else. Those black vipers have been making threats around town, talking about sending messages to people who don't show proper respect. You think they did this? I think a lot of things, Jack. Proving them is another matter. Sarah touched my arm. We should go home, you're exhausted. But I wasn't ready to leave. I walked closer to the ruins, stepping carefully around the debris. This was where I'd learned to throw a curveball, where Mom had taught me to change a tire, where Dad had explained the difference between right and wrong. Now it was just ashes and memories. That's when I saw him. Derek Wolf, standing at the edge of the property line, talking quietly to someone on his phone. He was 40 years old but looked younger, all gym muscles and perfect teeth. When he saw me watching, he quickly ended his call and walked over. Jack, man, I'm so sorry for your loss. He extended his hand, and I shook it because that's what you do in small towns. Your parents were good people. Thanks. If there's anything I can do, anything at all, just let me know. I've been trying to help Sarah and Tyler while you've been away. I'll bet you have, I thought. That's very generous of you. We're all family here on Dandelion Lane, right? Family. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. We drove home in silence, Sarah stealing glances at me like she was trying to read my mood. Tyler had gone to bed by the time we got back, leaving Sarah and me alone for the first time in 6 months. How are you holding up? She asked, settling onto the couch beside me. I've been better. She reached for my hand, and I noticed her wedding ring was missing. When I raised an eyebrow, she looked down at her bare finger. Oh, that. I've been doing a lot of cleaning lately. Must have forgotten to put it back on. Must have. I excused myself and went to our bedroom, claiming exhaustion. But sleep wouldn't come. Instead, I lay in the dark, listening to Sarah move around the house, hearing the soft ping of text messages from her phone in the living room. At 2 a.m, I got up to use the bathroom and saw her standing by the kitchen window, talking quietly on her phone. I know, but he's only here for 3 days, she was saying. We just have to be careful until he goes back. She turned and saw me watching. Her face went pale. I have to go, she said quickly, ending the call. Who was that? Just Marissa. She's having problems with her husband again. You know how it is. Marissa Chen, Sarah's best friend since high school. They'd always been thick as thieves, sharing secrets and covering for each other. But Marissa's husband worked the night shift at the paper mill. He wouldn't be home to cause problems at 2 a.m. Right, I said. Marissa. Sarah smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You should get some sleep, Jack. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. She was right about that. I went back to bed, but my mind was racing. 6 months away had given me perspective on a lot of things. The way Sarah had stopped writing letters after the first month, how her emails had become shorter and less personal, the way she'd changed the subject whenever I asked about her daily routine. And now Derek Wolf, showing up at my parents' fire scene like he belonged there. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, figuring it was spam. But something made me open it. The video file took a moment to load, and when it did, my blood turned to ice. Sarah and Derek, standing in the ruins of my parents' house, kissing like teenagers. The timestamp showed it was recorded just hours after the fire, while the ashes were still warm. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that they were laughing. I watched the video 3 times before my hands stopped shaking. Each replay revealed new details that cut deeper than the last. Sarah's hand on Derek's chest. The way she threw her head back when she laughed. The casual intimacy that spoke of familiarity, of practice. They were standing in the exact spot where my father's workshop used to be. I set the phone aside and stared at the ceiling, my mind racing through the implications. How long had this been going on? Was it just physical, or had they been planning something more? And who the hell had sent me this video? The anonymous number offered no clues, but someone wanted me to know the truth. Someone who'd been watching, waiting for the right moment to light the fuse. Sarah was still in the living room, probably texting her lover about how close they'd come to being caught. The thought made my stomach churn. But underneath the nausea was something else, something cold and calculating. I'd learned patience in the military. How to observe, how to plan, how to wait for the perfect moment to strike. Sarah and Derek had no idea what they'd started, but they were about to find out. The next morning, I woke to the smell of bacon and coffee. Sarah was in the kitchen, humming while she cooked breakfast. She'd put her wedding ring back on, I noticed. Probably remembered it when she was lying awake, planning her next move. "Morning, honey," she said brightly. "I thought you might want a good breakfast before we start making arrangements." Tyler was already at the table, shoveling eggs into his mouth while scrolling through his phone. He looked up when I sat down. "Dad, some of the guys at school are saying the Black Vipers burned down Grandpa's house. Is that true?" "We don't know yet, buddy. The sheriff's still investigating." "Derek says they've been causing trouble all over town," Sarah added, not meeting my eyes. "Maybe we should be more careful until they catch whoever did this," Derek says. Of course he did. "Speaking of Derek," I said casually, "I saw him at the fire scene last night. Seemed pretty upset about what happened." Sarah's hand tightened on her coffee mug. "He knew your parents. We all did." "Right. Just seemed odd, him being there so late. He was probably just driving by. You know how people are drawn to tragedy. Like moths to a flame, I thought." After breakfast, Tyler headed to school, and Sarah said she needed to run errands before we met with the funeral director. That left me alone in the house for the first time since coming home. I started in our bedroom, looking for evidence of Sarah's double life. It didn't take long to find it. Hidden in her jewelry box, underneath the earrings I'd bought her for our anniversary, was a hotel keycard. The Riverside Inn, room 237. The date stamped on the magnetic strip was from 2 weeks ago. In her dresser drawer, buried under her winter sweaters, I found a prepaid cell phone. The call history showed dozens of conversations with a number I recognized from the night before. Derek's number. But it was the text messages that really opened my eyes. "Can't wait to be together for real," one read. "Jack's deployment ends in 3 months. We need to figure out what we're doing," said another. "Maybe it's time to tell him the truth," Derek had written. Sarah's response was cold and calculating. "Not yet. I need to make sure I get what I deserve from the divorce. His military pension alone will set us up for years." My military pension, the money I'd earned bleeding for my country, and she was already planning how to spend it with her new boyfriend. There were more messages, detailing their plans to wait until I returned, then manufacture some crisis that would justify Sarah asking for a divorce. They'd even discussed having Derek discover evidence of my supposed infidelity, creating grounds that would favor Sarah in court. But the most damning messages were from the day before the fire. "An insurance adjuster called," Sarah had written. "Your parents' policy is worth $400K. If something happened to the house, don't even think about it," Derek had replied. "That's too dangerous. I'm not thinking about doing anything. I'm just saying, if something happened naturally, it would solve a lot of problems. Naturally, like a biker gang with a grudge and a taste for arson." I photographed everything with my phone, then put Sarah's secrets back where I'd found them. She thought she was so clever, playing the grieving daughter-in-law, while planning to cash in on my parents' death. She had no idea who she was dealing with. The funeral home was a study in forced sympathy and calculated grief. Mr. Henley, the director, had been burying our town's dead for 30 years. He knew exactly what to say, how long to pause, when to offer tissues. Sarah played her part perfectly, dabbing at her eyes while discussing flower arrangements and burial plots. She chose the most expensive casket, the premium service package, the works. "Money's no object," she told Mr. Henley. "Jack's parents deserve the best." Of course, money was no object. She wasn't paying for it. After we left the funeral home, Sarah suggested we stop by Derek's gym to thank him for all his support. The suggestion made my skin crawl, but I agreed. I wanted to get a closer look at my wife's lover, to understand what I was up against. Wolf's Fitness occupied a converted warehouse downtown, all exposed brick and industrial lighting. Derek had done well for himself since his divorce, turning his obsession with bodybuilding into a thriving business. The place was packed with afternoon workout warriors, mostly women who seemed more interested in Derek's attention than actual exercise. He spotted us the moment we walked in, his face lighting up with what looked like genuine pleasure. Either he was a better actor than I'd given him credit for, or he was genuinely happy to see my wife. "Sarah! Jack!" He bounded over like an eager puppy, all smiles and firm handshakes. "How are you holding up?" We're managing, I said. Sarah wanted to thank you for everything you've done. It's nothing, really. Your family's been through enough. He turned to Sarah, and I caught the look that passed between them. Quick, intimate, loaded with meaning. Anything you need, just ask. You're too good to us, Sarah said, touching his arm. I watched them interact, noting the small intimacies they thought I wouldn't catch. The way Derek's hand lingered on Sarah's shoulder, how she leaned into him when she laughed, the casual way they moved around each other, like dancers who'd practiced their routine. Jack, you should come by more often when you get back from deployment, Derek said. I could set you up with a training program, help you stay in fighting shape. Fighting shape. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'll keep that in mind, I said. We made small talk for another 10 minutes, Derek playing the concerned family friend while Sarah played the devoted wife. It was a master class in deception, and I had to admire their skill even as I planned their destruction. As we were leaving, Derek called out, "Hey, Jack, I'm really sorry about your parents. They were good people." I turned back to him, studying his face for any sign of guilt or remorse, but all I saw was practiced sincerity and perfect white teeth. Thanks, Derek. I appreciate everything you've done for my family. Everything indeed. That evening, Tyler and I sat in the living room while Sarah made dinner. He was quieter than usual, lost in thought as he played some online game. "Dad," he said finally, "can I ask you something?" "Shoot. Do you think Mom's been acting weird lately?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" And Tyler glanced toward the kitchen, then lowered his voice. "She's been going out a lot more. Says she's with Aunt Marissa, but sometimes I call Aunt Marissa's house and she's not there." Smart kid. Too smart for his own good. People deal with stress differently, Tyler. Maybe she just needs some space to process everything. Maybe. He didn't sound convinced. It's just, she seems happier when you're not around. Is that weird? Happier. Because she was living a double life, playing house with Derek while I was overseas, risking my life for a country and a family that apparently didn't want me. Not weird at all, buddy. Sometimes people need time to figure things out, but Tyler wasn't done. Derek's been around a lot, too. Like, a lot. He helped Mom move some furniture last month, and he's always texting her about something. Derek's just being a good neighbor, I guess. Tyler paused his game and looked at me directly. "Dad, if something was wrong, really wrong, would you tell me?" The question hung in the air between us. My 15-year-old son, already wise enough to sense the cracks in his parents' marriage, asking me to be honest about a situation I was only beginning to understand myself. "I'd tell you what you needed to know, when you needed to know it," I said finally. He nodded, seemingly satisfied with that answer, and went back to his game. But I could see the worry in his eyes, the fear that his world was about to change in ways he couldn't control. He was right to be afraid. By the time I was finished with Sarah and Derek, nothing would be the same. My phone buzzed with another message from the unknown number. This time it was a photo of Sarah's car, parked outside the Riverside Inn, time-stamped from 3 days ago. While I was planning my parents' funeral, she was sneaking off to her love nest. The message that followed was brief. Room 237. Every Tuesday and Friday. Thought you should know. Someone was definitely keeping tabs on my wife's extracurricular activities. Someone who wanted Derek and Sarah exposed as badly as I did. But who and why? I was about to find out. The funeral was everything Sarah had planned. Expensive, elaborate, and completely wrong for my parents. Mom and Dad had been simple people who valued substance over show. They would have hated the ornate casket, the excessive flower arrangements, the hired mourners who didn't know them from Adam. But Sarah glowed as she accepted condolences from half the town, playing the perfect daughter-in-law with Oscar-worthy performance. She wore a black dress that was just tight enough to be inappropriate, and I noticed Derek's eyes following her every move. He sat in the third row with his gym buddies, looking appropriately somber in his rented suit. When it came time for people to share memories, he stood up and delivered a touching speech about how my parents had welcomed him into their community, how they'd treated him like family. The bastard almost had me convinced. After the service, people gathered at our house for the reception. Sarah had hired caterers, bought enough food to feed an army, and transformed our modest living room into something from a magazine. The whole production probably cost more than my parents spent on groceries in a year. I found myself standing in the corner, watching the show unfold. Neighbors I barely recognized helped themselves to expensive wine, while discussing property values and insurance payouts. Sarah worked the room like a politician, accepting praise for her strength during this difficult time. "Hell of a thing," said a voice behind me. I turned to see Pete Rodriguez, my best friend since high school, and one of the few people in town I trusted completely. Pete worked for the fire department, which meant he'd been at my parents' house that night. "Hell of a thing," I agreed. Pete was quiet for a moment, watching Sarah laugh at something Derek had whispered in her ear. "You know, Jack, I've been fighting fires for 15 years, seen all kinds of blazes, from kitchen accidents to insurance jobs. And your parents' fire bothers me. Started in 3 different places simultaneously. And that's not how electrical fires work. In 3 different places. That was the first I'd heard of multiple ignition points. You telling me it was arson? And I'm telling you it wasn't an accident." Pete took a long drink from his beer. "But proving it's another matter. Fire destroys evidence, and the Black Vipers aren't exactly cooperating with the investigation. What about witnesses? And funny thing about that, Mrs. Patterson next door says she saw a red Mustang parked across the street about an hour before the fire started. Driver was just sitting there, like he was waiting for something. And a red Mustang, like the one Derek drove. Did she get a license plate? And too dark, but she said the car left right after the flames started, like whoever was driving didn't want to stick around for the show." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Pete, are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying your parents' fire was set deliberately, and whoever did it knew exactly when to be there and when to leave." He paused, studying my face. "I'm also saying your wife's been asking a lot of questions about insurance payouts and inheritance laws." And the pieces were falling into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see. Sarah and Derek, planning my parents' death for the insurance money, using the Black Vipers as cover, making it look like random gang violence while they cashed in on tragedy. "There's something else," Pete continued. "The accelerant we found wasn't gasoline or kerosene. It was something more sophisticated, harder to trace. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. Or knew someone who did." "Exactly." We stood in silence, watching Sarah accept another round of condolences. She was good, I had to give her that. If I didn't know better, I'd believe she was genuinely grieving. But I did know better. The reception dragged on for another 2 hours, with Sarah playing the gracious hostess while Derek played the supportive family friend. They were careful not to interact too much in public, but I caught the subtle signals passing between them. A touch here, a meaningful look there, the practiced choreography of secret lovers. When the last guest finally left, Sarah collapsed onto the couch with theatrical exhaustion. "Thank God that's over," she said. "I don't think I could have handled another minute of small talk." "You did great," I told her. "Mom and Dad would have been proud." She smiled at that, a real smile for the first time all day. "I just wanted to give them the send-off they deserved." The send-off they deserved. Right. Tyler had gone to his room, claiming homework, which left Sarah and me alone with the aftermath of the reception. I helped her clean up, playing the dutiful husband while my mind worked through everything Pete had told me. 3 ignition points. A red Mustang. Sophisticated accelerant. Insurance questions. Sarah was washing dishes when her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it quickly, then set the phone aside without responding. "Aren't you going to answer that?" "It's just Marissa. She can wait." But I'd seen the screen before she turned it away. The message wasn't from Marissa. It was from Derek. "Everything okay with Beautiful tonight?" Beautiful. Pet names already. I excused myself and went to the garage, where I kept my tools and my sanity. Working with my hands had always helped me think, and right now I needed clarity more than anything else. The garage was exactly as I'd left it 6 months ago. Organized chaos that made perfect sense to me, and no sense to anyone else. Wrenches arranged by size, screwdrivers sorted by type, every tool in its designated place. It was the only space in the house that was purely mine, untouched by Sarah's redecorating and Derek's influence. Here, surrounded by the honest smell of motor oil and metal shavings, I could think clearly. My parents were dead, murdered, if Pete was right about the arson. Sarah was cheating on me with Derek, planning to divorce me and take half of everything I'd worked for. They'd probably killed my parents for the insurance money, using biker gang violence as cover, and they thought I was too stupid to figure it out. That was their first mistake. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos I'd taken of Sarah's secret messages. The evidence was damning, but not enough for criminal charges. Adultery wasn't illegal in Massachusetts, and proving Sarah and Derek had orchestrated the fire would be nearly impossible without witnesses or physical evidence. But I didn't need to prove it in court. I just needed to destroy them in the court of public opinion. Small towns run on reputation and gossip. Sarah's social standing depended on being seen as the perfect wife and mother. Derek's business relied on his image as a trustworthy community leader. If I could expose their affair, show people what they really were, their carefully constructed lives would crumble. The question was how to do it without destroying myself in the process. My phone buzzed with another message from my anonymous informant. This time it was a video file, shot through a hotel room window. Sarah and Derek, naked and writhing on the bed of room 237. The timestamp showed it was recorded yesterday, while I was at the funeral home making arrangements for my parents. While I was grieving, she was screwing her boyfriend. The message that followed was brief. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., same room. Thought you might want to see for yourself. Someone was definitely orchestrating this, feeding me information and evidence at precisely the right moments. But who, and what did they want in return? I was about to find out. The next morning, Sarah announced she had a doctor's appointment in the afternoon. A routine checkup, nothing serious, but it might take a while. You should rest, she said, kissing my forehead with lips that had been wrapped around Derek's cock less than 24 hours ago. You've been through so much. I watched her drive away in her Honda, then waited exactly 10 minutes before following in my rental car. She drove straight to the Riverside Inn, just as my informant had predicted. I parked across the street and settled in to wait. At exactly 2:15, Derek's red Mustang pulled into the lot. He looked around nervously before heading inside, clearly uncomfortable with the daylight rendezvous. Amateur. My phone rang. Unknown number. Are you watching? A voice asked. Male, middle-aged, with a slight accent I couldn't place. Who is this? Someone who thinks you deserve better than what you're getting. Why are you helping me? Let's just say Derek Wolf has made some enemies, and I'm tired of watching him get away with things. What kind of things? The kind that would interest the IRS, the health department, and several women who thought they were his only side piece. Interesting. Derek had more secrets than just my wife. What do you want from me? I asked. I want you to make them pay. Both of them. Sarah's not the innocent victim she pretends to be. I'm listening. Meet me tonight. Denny's on Route 9, 10 o'clock. Come alone. The line went dead. I sat in my car for another hour, watching the hotel room window. Occasionally, I caught glimpses of movement, shadows against the curtains that told the story I already knew. My wife was upstairs, betraying 15 years of marriage, with a man who'd probably killed my parents. At 3:30, Derek left first. He looked satisfied, like a cat who'd caught a particularly tasty mouse. Sarah emerged 20 minutes later, checking her appearance in her car's side mirror before driving home. She arrived at the house 10 minutes before I did, just enough time to shower and change clothes. When I walked in, she was in the kitchen starting dinner, humming the same tune she'd been humming the morning after my parents died. How was your appointment? I asked. Fine, just routine stuff. She didn't look at me when she answered. Doctor says I'm in perfect health. I'll bet he does. That evening, Tyler and I watched a movie while Sarah claimed she needed to catch up on work emails. She spent most of the time texting, probably coordinating with Derek about their next meeting. At 9:30, I told them I was going for a drive to clear my head. Sarah barely looked up from her phone. Don't be out too late, she said absently. You need your rest. Rest, right. Denny's was nearly empty when I arrived. Just a few truckers and insomniacs nursing coffee and regrets. I spotted my contact immediately, a man in his 50s, wearing a baseball cap and a windbreaker that had seen better days. He waved me over to a corner booth, and I got my first good look at the person who'd been feeding me information about my wife's affair. Name's Carl, he said, extending a calloused hand. Carl Patterson. Patterson, as in Mrs. Patterson, the neighbor who'd seen Derek's car the night of the fire. You're related to my mother. She lives next door to where your parents used to live. His face darkened. She's been watching Derek Wolf for months, ever since he started sniffing around your wife. Didn't sit right with her, a married woman carrying on while her husband was overseas. So she's been spying on them. She's been documenting them. Photos, videos, license plates, times and dates. My mother may be 75, but she's sharp as a tack and twice as mean when someone crosses her sense of right and wrong. Carl pulled out a manila envelope and slid it across the table. Everything's in there. Hotel receipts, photos of them together, even some financial records that might interest you. Financial records. Turns out your wife's been moving money around, setting up accounts Derek doesn't know about. She's playing him just as hard as she's playing you. I opened the envelope and scanned the contents. Bank statements, credit card bills, hotel receipts going back 6 months. Sarah had been busy while I was deployed, and not just with Derek. There's more, Carl continued. Derek's business is in trouble. He owes money to some very unpleasant people, the kind who don't accept payment plans. Your parents' insurance money would solve a lot of his problems. You think he killed them for the money? I think he's desperate enough to do anything, and your wife gave him the perfect opportunity. Carl leaned back in his seat, studying my face. Question is, what are you going to do about it? It was a good question. What was I going to do about it? I'm going to make them pay, I said finally. Carl smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Good, because my mother didn't raise me to let murderers and cheaters get away with their crimes. He stood to leave, then paused. One more thing, Jack. Be careful. Derek's got friends, and some of them aren't the kind of people you want to cross. What kind of friends? The kind who ride motorcycles and burn down houses. The Black Vipers, of course. Carl left me sitting in the booth with the envelope of evidence, my mind racing with possibilities. Sarah and Derek thought they were so clever, playing their little games while I was overseas. They had no idea what they'd unleashed. But they were about to find out.